We got shots fired right now, guys. We need SWAT.
Police say a student armed with his father's shotgun opened fire in a Texas high school.
At first, there was a good 3 minutes of just straight chaos, and you could just hear the shots just boom, boom, boom.
At least 10 are dead, many others hurt, just 3 months after the Parkland massacre.
Very sad day. Very, very sad.
I shouldn't be going through this at my school. It's been happening everywhere. I've always kind of felt like eventually it was going to happen here too.
Also tonight, a deadly crash in Cuba. A jetliner with more than 100 on board goes down on takeoff from Havana. Hawaiians brace for more eruptions.
This is Fissure 20D, and it only looks as though he stumbled on the entrance to hell.
And the excitement is building for the royal wedding, now just hours away.
This is the CBS Evening News with Jeff Glor, reporting tonight from Santa Fe, Texas.
This is our Western edition. We are at Santa Fe High School, about 30 miles southeast of Houston, the scene of the latest mass shooting in America. At least 10 people were killed, 9 students and 1 adult today. 10 others were hurt. We are just beginning to learn the identities of the dead, among them Ann Perkins, a substitute teacher, and Sabika Sheikh, an exchange student from Pakistan. Police say the gunman in custody tonight is a 17-year-old junior at the school. They say he was armed with his father's shotgun and a revolver. And police are searching the suspect's car and his parents' homes tonight.
They're having a shooting at the high school, have an officer down, shooter not in custody.
The chaos played out over police radio calls.
Shots fired. We have several shots fired, possibly 1 or 2 rooms in this area that we're at.
School shooting, they have an active shooter, several people down.
He's actually shooting. He's in the art room. We got shots fired right now, guys.
Police say the shooter had a shotgun and a revolver and began shooting just as first period started. Sophomore Dakota Schrader was in the building.
As soon as the alarms went off, everybody just started running outside, and next thing you know, everybody looks and you hear boom, 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 and I just ran as fast as I could to the nearest forest so I could hide, and I called my mom.
Paige Curry called her mother too.
I told her, Mom, there are gunshots. I heard 4 shots, and it was it was real. It was real this time.
The 10 wounded were rushed to area hospitals, including John Barnes, a former 20-year Houston policeman who worked as a school resource officer. Fleeing students were huddled onto fields away from the school as parents raced to the scene looking for kids.
I told her to stay calm, to breathe, and just waiting and waiting and waiting, and finally they were leading her out of the school. Thank God she's okay.
30 minutes after the first call, the shooting was over, but the threat was not. School District Police Chief Walter Braun.
There have been explosive devices found in the high school and surrounding areas adjacent to the high school.
The devices included pressure cookers and pipe bombs. Police say the 17-year-old suspected gunman, Dimitrios Progorchis, was a student at Santa Fe High. Another student has been detained as a person of interest. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the shooter wanted to commit suicide.
He gave himself up and admitted at the time that he didn't have the courage to commit the suicide, that he wanted to take his own life earlier.
It's been happening everywhere. I've always kind of felt like eventually it was going to happen here too. So, I don't know. I wasn't surprised, I was just scared.
Back in April, some Santa Fe students joined a nationwide school walkout to protest gun violence in the wake of the massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High in Parkland, Florida. Today, Stoneman Douglas students tweeted their support for Santa Fe, one saying, "I should be celebrating my last day of high school, but instead my heart is broken to hear of the tragedy at Santa Fe." You saw sophomore Dakota Schrader in our report just a moment ago. Dakota is with me now tonight. Dakota, again, is a sophomore at the school. Talk a little bit about where you were and what you saw and what happened.
Well, I was on the far side of the high school, but the shooting actually took right there, this side of the high school, far back. And when the fire alarm went off, you know, of course, everybody thought it was the normal procedure, and we go out to the field behind us, And, you know, we start hearing the booms. So, you know, everyone starts running. Teachers are yelling, run, run, run. And me and my friend Ryan make it to the woods right there.
Did everybody, so where did all the students go? They went all just in different directions. What kind of direction were you being given?
I didn't want to go towards the crowd because I didn't know who was the gun holder and where it was coming from, so we just ran to the woods.
What kind of drills do you do?
Well, we don't really have hurricane drills that much anymore, but we do have fire drills every so often. And
you were able to talk to your mother eventually. I know she was very worried. Talk about that conversation. Well, when I called my mom, I was having an asthma attack at that point, and I couldn't really explain to her what was going on because I was trying to gasp for my air. So my mom asked to hand the phone to the person who I was with, which was Ryan, and they talked it out. I told her, you know, I've calmed down. She calmed me down. He calmed me down. I told her, you know, there might be a shooting at the school, but I don't really know what's going on. Did you know the shooter? No, not personally. Do you know anyone who is in the hospital tonight who was injured? Brianna Quintanilla, my friend. How's she doing? She's doing okay. She actually texted me back earlier. How are you doing tonight? I'm relieved that I made it out safe, and I send all my prayers to everyone and their family and friends. All right, Dakota Schrader, thank you very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it. This was the 5th deadliest school shooting in America after Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and Columbine. Omar Villafranca now on what we know about the suspect in today's shooting.
Facebook photos of alleged shooter Dimitrios Pagorchis showed the 17-year-old looking like the boy next door. He played on the junior varsity football team and was a member of his church dance squad. Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Here, the red flag warnings were either non-existent or are very imperceptible.
But there was a dark side. Weeks before the shooting, Pagorchis posted these images on social media: a Born to Kill t-shirt, a gun and a knife, and a long green coat with Nazi regalia. According to law enforcement, Pagorchis came to school armed with his father's shotgun and a .38 caliber pistol. Police found explosives, including CO2 and Molotov cocktails, at his home and inside a vehicle.
It appears that these explosive devices were made by the shooter. Cannot solidly confirm that yet, but there's no reason to suspect that any other person other than the shooter made those devices.
Students describe Pagorchis as quiet and weird because a long trench coat was part of his daily dress code, even today when the temperature hovered near 90 degrees.
As far as investigations by law enforcement agencies, as far as arrest or confrontation with law enforcement, as far as having a criminal history, he has none. His slate is pretty clean.
Pagorchis and his family lived in a mobile home a few miles from the school. Neighbors say they kept to themselves. Hannah Nelson knew the family from volunteering at the local YMCA.
They're a really good family, so of course it's shocking, but I mean, bad things happen and you don't know what someone's going through at any moment.
We just saw Pagorchis as he made his first court appearance from here in the Galveston County Jail. He was quiet, he was subdued, he was listening to the judge and answering. He did not have to enter a plea. That will come later on. He does face 1 count of capital murder and aggravated assault on a peace officer. More charges could be filed against him. The big question is why? Motive, and we still don't know that.
All right, Omar Villafranca, thanks. President Trump was preparing to speak at a White House summit on prison reform when he again addressed the nation's plague of gun violence. According to the Washington Post, there have already been 16 school shootings this year. Paula Reed is at the White House.
This has been going on too long in our country. Too many years, too many decades now.
Today, President Trump expressed frustration and offered his support in the wake of the deadly school shooting in Texas.
My administration is determined to do everything in our power to protect our students, secure our schools.
I lost a best friend, who's practically a brother.
But just 3 months ago, the president met with victims of another tragic shooting in Parkland, Florida.
How many children have to get shot? It stops here with this administration and me.
The president promised those families he would make schools safer, but his calls for stronger federal background checks and raising age limits nationwide on rifle purchases have gone nowhere. But at the state level, the Parkland families did see some success. Florida's Republican Governor Rick Scott pushed through a new law that raises the minimum age for buying rifles and provides more mental health counseling for troubled students. Florida's new law also allows some school employees to be armed.
One thing that can be done a lot faster than passing a law is just beefing up security at schools. And that is something the president says that he supports. In the wake of today's shooting, Tampa police announced that they will be increasing security at area schools. Jeff?
Paula, thank you. We will have much more on the Santa Fe shooting later in our broadcast here, but we're going to turn now to the fiery crash of a jetliner on a domestic flight in Cuba. A passenger plane nearly 40 years old went down in a field shortly after takeoff from Havana. According to Cuban state media, of the 110 on board, 3 survived. Here's Manuel Bajorquez.
These are the fiery images of a Boeing 737 after it crashed just moments after takeoff. The towering plume of smoke rose from the crash site as firefighters rushed to extinguish the flames. The screams of high school students could be heard inside this nearby school as they ran for safety. The plane, carrying 104 passengers and the crew, was operated by the state-run Cuban airline and was headed to the eastern Cuban city of Holguin. Rescue workers rushed to look for survivors, sending at least 3 people to a hospital in critical condition, according to Cuban media. Cuba's new president, Miguel Díaz-Canel, also visited the site where debris and bodies could be seen everywhere. He called it an unfortunate aviation accident and said there was a high number of victims. Last year was the safest year on record for air travel, with no deaths on commercial passenger airlines. But this year already, there have been at least 5 accidents involving commercial airliners and more than 200 deaths. The Cuban airline was reportedly renting the airplane that crashed today, and state TV reported it was being operated by a crew from Mexico.
Cuban officials are asking relatives to provide DNA to help identify the dead. The U.S. State Department said it is closely watching the situation in Cuba to determine whether any U.S. citizens were on board. Jeff?
Manny, thank you. We do have an update now on our lead story from last night. A source tells CBS News the driver of a school bus made an illegal U-turn before colliding with a dump truck on a New Jersey highway. A student and a teacher were killed. 43 others on the bus were treated at hospitals. President Trump said today he is nominating Robert Wilkie to be the next Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Wilkie has been serving as acting secretary since the president fired David Shulkin. Mr. Trump's first choice to replace Shulkin, White House physician Ronnie Jackson, withdrew his nomination amid allegations of misconduct. Still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, more on the school shooting here in Santa Fe. But up next, the one thing everyone in Hawaii's eruption zone is being urged to wear. We are back now from Santa Fe, Texas, and we take you now to Hawaii in what appear to be scenes from the underworld in a tropical paradise. More cracks have opened in the ground on the Big Island, blasting red-hot lava and dangerous gas into the air. Mark Strassman is there.
Over the last 2 days, 2 new fissures, ground cracks bursting with lava, remind the Big Island of the Kilauea volcano's menace. Another fissure surfaced in Leilani Estates, where roughly 1,700 residents have been evacuated. This is fissure 20D, and it only looks as though he stumbled on the entrance to hell. A mountain of black lava here, churning lava behind it, a small reminder of how much volcanic energy lurks beneath the surface. Other fissures, silent for days, have roared back to life. Satellite images over the last 2 weeks show how much the volcano's main crater has expanded. We caught up with geologist Elise Rumpf.
It is important to tell us the age of the lava because it's definitely thrilling to be this close to a lava flow.
Not for the Kelly family, one of 12,000 residents who got free protective masks on Thursday, when the biggest eruption yet sent ash 5 miles into the sky.
Asphalt is basically silicate glass, and that's what you don't want in your mouth, in your throat, in your lungs.
I'm standing on more than 2 weeks worth of lava that overwhelmed Leilani Estates and buried more than a dozen homes. The nearest fissure is where you see that steam rising, and this particular lava flow stretches for a half mile. Jeff, scientists just don't know whether the big explosion for this volcano is already underway or has yet to begin.
Mark Strassman, just extraordinary pictures behind you. Thank you. Coming up here tonight, some much needed good news on the eve of a fairy tale wedding. We are back now from Santa Fe, Texas, 5,000 miles from here in Windsor, England. It's the eve of the royal wedding. The mother of the American bride was introduced today to the Queen, and Roxana Saberi is there.
The royal groom and his best man stepped out of Windsor Castle this afternoon to greet well-wishers from around the world.
This is what these crowds have come here to see, Prince Harry and his brother, one day before Harry marries Meghan Markle.
Prince, we're from Los Angeles. How are you, sir?
Many people cheering were Americans in Windsor to watch an American actress marry into the British royal family. Ann Webb says she came here not only for the close-ups, but also to witness history.
It's just neat to see how the monarchies change and the evolution of the monarchy, and seeing how here we are today, marrying an American, a divorced American biracial woman. It's just fun to see.
Do you think she's helping to break tradition?
Oh, yes, I think so.
In more ways than one. Earlier today, Markle announced, before having tea with her mother and the Queen, her future father-in-law, Prince Charles, will now walk her down the aisle. But only part way, says CBS contributor Tina Brown, who wrote a biography on Princess Diana.
She's saying, I'm going to walk down the aisle just at the beginning alone. I make my entrance alone. That is a great statement, really. It says, I'm not being given to anyone. I am actually giving myself. And it's a lovely gesture, I think, that's maybe becomes a big next tradition for brides.
Is there any precedent for this in a royal wedding?
No precedent. But this has been a wedding all without precedent.
How are you both feeling?
Thrilled.
In other firsts for a royal wedding, a gospel choir will perform at tomorrow's service here at St. George's Chapel. And while the head of the Church of England will preside over the vows, an American bishop will deliver the address. Jeff?
All right, Roxana Saberi in Windsor, thank you. Gail King and Kevin Frazier will anchor CBS live coverage of the royal wedding tomorrow morning at 4 Eastern time. Then tomorrow evening, Gail hosts a 2-hour special royal romance that is at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on CBS. Up next here tonight, for a generation of Americans, the unthinkable no longer is. Among the wounded here in the shooting at Santa Fe High today is sophomore Rome Schubert. He was treated for a gunshot wound to the head.
He had fired 10 or 12 shots in that room before he left. I'm just thinking that I'm one of the lucky ones, and I'm glad that God spared me, but I just feel bad that they didn't make it, and that they had no reason to be shot or anything. They didn't deserve that.
Rome Schubert, part of a generation that can no longer take school safety for granted. Here's Jim Axelrod.
For Generation Lockdown, the question is no longer if it could happen, as much as when it will.
Was there a part of you that was like, this isn't real, this would not happen in my school?
No, there wasn't.
Why so?
It's been happening everywhere. I've always kind of felt like eventually it was going to happen here too. So, I don't know. I wasn't surprised, I was just scared.
It's worth another listen. No part of her thought it couldn't happen at her school.
Was there a part of you that was like, this isn't real, this would not happen in my school?
No, there wasn't.
She is the newest member of the heartbreaking chorus of young voices around the country. From Lexington Park, Maryland.
I didn't really believe that something like this would happen to a school near me. And it's really scary.
To Benton, Kentucky.
There was a lot of blood everywhere. It was horrible.
A generation that knows no matter how forcefully they chant never again, their experience suggests it most probably will. This year, more people have been killed in school shootings than members of the military have been killed while serving.
I shouldn't be going through this at my school.
Santa Fe High School was on lockdown less than 3 months ago. Today, it was for real, which is why this girl no longer thought it couldn't happen at her school.
I wasn't surprised, I was just scared.
And sadly, she is the voice of this generation. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, New York.
Sadly so. CBS News will be streaming the latest on this shooting throughout the evening on CBSN. That is the CBS Evening News tonight. I'm Jeff Glor in Santa Fe, Texas. Good night.